Is daf Sadi Vav, and we're going to begin with the Mishnah at the beginning of this parak, the 11th parak on daf Sadi Ham and Beis. And what we have to know is that if a woman collects her ksuba after her husband's death, then at that point, once she collects her ksuba, the original Tanai Bezdin that a woman is supported with mizonos by the somim and the yorshim of the husband no longer applies, and the somim do not have to pay mizonos. The machlokas between Anshe Golil and Anshe Yehuda, according to the Anshe Golil, the somim do not have the right to force her to accept her ksuba. They would therefore be part of mizonos. They have to continue until she, on her own initiative, collects her ksuba. Whereas the Anshe Yehuda are of the opinion that the somim, the balls in their court, they can decide whether or not they want to pay the ksuba, and then from then on, they're no longer chayav in mizonos. The Mishnah says, Almana mizonos minichse yisomim, a woman whose husband dies, and her husband, let's say, had children from another wife, she will be supported from the estate that was inherited by the banim of her husband, by the Yisomim. But therefore, since she is collecting the zonos from the Yisomim, Ma'aseh Yadeh Shalahem, if she works, if she, let's say, weaves something and manufactures something, produces it in such a way that it has value, that those monies accrue to the Yisomim. And that's because the takana Ma'aseh Yadeh Tachas Mizonos Seher. However, the Ein Chayovim B'Kfurasa, the Yisomim are not chayav to bury her. Why? It's the chiv of the Baal to bury his wife, because Eino Tzorch Litei Lo Ksuba. Now that she died first, he's parted from Ksuba. So when we alleviate the Baal from paying the Ksuba, we require him to bury his wife and all the expenses there. Yoshua, Yorshik Subasa Chayom B'Kfurasa, who will, in fact, after her death, when she was an almana at the time of her death, who will bury her? And the answer is Yoshua. Now, she has relatives that are not the Yorshim of the Baal, but they inherit her ksuba. And since they inherit her ksuba, therefore the chayav in kfura, because the chayav kfura is tachas ksubasa. Iboilu, the Gemara raised the following suffix: nizones tnan o hanizones tnan. Basically, the Gemara is going back to the machlokas between Anshe Golil, who maintain that the Yisomim cannot force her to accept a ksuba, and therefore they cannot exempt themselves from the chayav mizonos, and therefore we would read the Mishnah as nizones. But if it says hanizones, then it's talking about a case where the Yisomim did not exercise their rights to pay for ksuba and to pater themselves up from zonos, which would reflect the shita of the Anshe Yehuda. And the Gemara says nizones tanai kanshe golil, so it means that there's an absolute rule that under all circumstances the Yisomim have to pay her mizonos, and there's no situation in which they can force her to collect a ksuba and therefore exempt themselves from mizonos. Well, the mahanizonos, the mashmos of the hay of hanizonos is if she is being supported, then they collect her Ma'aseh Yadayim. But there are situations in which she's not being supported and they don't collect Ma'aseh Yadayim, because they can decide, like Anshe Yehuda hold, to exercise their rights to pay her up the ksuba whether she likes it or not, and pater themselves up from mizonos. Toshma, now we start the daf for today, daf Tzadi Vav. Omar Abzera, Omar Shmuel, Mitzias Almona Liatzma. Now, when a woman finds an object, then that mitzvah goes to her husband in the framework of marriage in lieu of the fact that he is supporting her. So if you hold hanizonis, like Anshe Yehuda, which means that there are situations in which the Yisoma are paying her mizonos. For example, if they forced her to accept her ksuba, is then it makes sense that the Mishnah would say that, that Shmuel would say that Metzias Almona li'atzma. Because since the Yisomim are not paying her mizonos because they decided to force her to accept the ksuba, therefore she gets to keep her mitzvah. If you would drop the hay in our Mishnah and reflect the sheet of Yanshe Golil, that it's absolute under all circumstances that the Yisomim have to pay mizonos, so nehevi kebal, just like the Baal when he pays mizonos, ma Baal mitzias ishto levaila, and if he's chayav mizonos, he collects on mitzvah. So to hochinami, in the case where the Yorshin of the husband will be supporting her mitzvah ishto Yorshin, they should be able to claim ownership on her mitzvah. And the answer is li'olam emelchan zonistan. Even if I hold like the Anshe Golil, that under all circumstances, the Yisomim, the Yoshia Baal, have to pay mizonos, and there's no way that they can wiggle themselves out by forcing them to take the ksuba. But nevertheless, Shmuel could still maintain that she keeps her mitzvah liatzma, because there's going to be another reason entirely as to why a woman gives over her mitzvah to her Baal. We want to avoid any sort of friction or tension in the marriage, and we want to say that she should magnanimously be giving over her mitzvah to the Baal, and that's going to avoid Eva, which means sinah is to heavy Eva. But in this case, Hani Yarshim, heavy Eva, the Rabbanim don't care about Eva vis-a-vis the Yarshim, and they must support her against their will, have to support her. And if there'll be Ava because the Metzias Isha of the Almana will be Miatzma, so too be it. For example, a woman who's married, in the framework of the marriage, she will do Tchina, Afia, Bishul, she'll do all those works and many others, as we saw back on Daf Nun Testament Beit. And Almona now, also, because she's Chayiv and Maisia there, insofar as she's collecting the Mizonos, is Osel Yoshim, she does all those malachos. However, there are malachos shel Chiba, Chutz Mimzigas HaKos, to dilute the concentrated wine with water. Hatzos Hamita, which means the spread on the sheets and the bedding, and Harchotzas Panav Yochvad to bring the water for his bath. All this is Ribui Chiba between Baal and Isha that has no application vis-a-vis the Yorshim. This is called Shimush Talmidei Chachamim. I'm sorry. Now we're talking about an Eved is chayav to do shimush for his adon. Is Talmud also a rabbo? That's already what we call shimush talmidei chachamim chutz me'ataras minol. But to take off his shoes, a Talmud should not do that for his rebbe, because the spectator might jump to the wrong conclusions and assume he's an Eved. When are we afraid that the onlook of the spectator will think he's an Eved? That's only El Makom Shemakirnos, so they don't know who he is. Makom Shemakirnos, everyone knows he's a Talmud, Les Lamba. There's no Isur of HaTorah's Minol, in which case the Talmud go to the extreme, to Mekayim Shimish Talmidei Chacham, even as far as HaTorah's Minol. Omer Avashi b'Makom Shemakirnos, so Nami, Lo Amar Nelo Delo Manat Tefillin. Now Manat Tefillin less line. But while he's wearing his tefillin, it's crystal clear he's an Eved because an Eved is part of the tefillin. And generally speaking, it wasn't there for the Avodim to wear tefillin. He's wearing tefillin constantly. That's a statement of identity that I'm a Jew and I'm not an Eved. And therefore, he'd be allowed to remove the shoes of his Rebbe. Om Chia bar Abba, Om Yochanan, Kol Amonea Talmido Shamsho. If a Rebbe decides, you know what, I don't need your Shimush Talmud Chachamim, is Kilu Monea Mimenu Chesed. It's as if he's taking away, robbing the Talmud of Chesed. Shenemar Lamos Meireu Chesed. Pasuk in Iyov Perek Vav. Lamos Meireu means someone who's Meisir Atzmo Michavero. Like a person says to his friend, you know, get off my back. I don't want to have that relationship with you of shimush. And chesed, it's as if he removed from him chesed by relating to him as lamas re'eu shemeiser atzmi michavero. But not by Yitzchak mer'af porek mimenu yir shamayim shnemar the yiras shadai ya'azov. And then we have the pasuk, as we said, in Iyov, and that indicates Yiras Shaddai Yazov. Fine. Amar Abelot, Almana Shetofsa Metaltalin, Bimizonoseha, Mashetofsa Tofsa. If she grabbed onto Metaltalin in lieu of her rights to Mizonos, then although the chiyuv of Yisov is to be porea, to pay up the Mizonos from Karka that was inherited from the father, but nevertheless, post facto, she created new facts on the ground, so to speak, and that which she grabbed. And she'll be able to collect her Mizonos from that, those metalton that she grabbed on Tanya Halki, and we support Rabbi ruling based on a brayso. Almana shetofsa metalton zonasea, mashetofsa tofsa. V'chein ki yoser Abdimi Omar Maaseh b'kalosa shel Rabbi Shabsai shetofsa diskia malei mos. She grabbed onto an entire flask of coins for the purpose of collecting haksu v'loya kofiat chacham lotzi biyada. So the tfisa is valid and is meaningful. Now, there's a machlokas here. Rishonim, the Ravan holds this is an issue of tofsa li'achar misas habal. And that's where we differentiate between mizonos and ksuba, according to Ravina. But if she grabbed onto these metalton b'chayiv baila, then the tfisa would work even for ksuba, whereas Rabbeinu Chananel disagrees and he holds that dafka v'tofsa mechayin, that's when tfisa would work from mizonos, but only from mizonos. But tofsa li'achar misas habal, then the tfisa is not meaningful and is not valid at all, even for mizonos, and will take away that which she grabbed on. So there's a fundamental difference here between ksuba and mizonos, and Tosfos Maskal Almon explains, based on the Rivan that we mentioned earlier, that we're talking about tofsa li'achar misa. And as far as mizonos is concerned, since she doesn't collect mizonos from the Shubadim, the Rabbanan therefore had to sort of counter and give a concession and strengthen her ability to be tofes metaltal. But the ksuba, since she has recourse to collect from the Shubadim, from the Lekuchos, lo helimu es kocha, they didn't upgrade and intensify her power, her authority. Now, according to Rabbeinu Chananel, that we're talking about tfisa mechayim, so we would say the following: Dafka mizonos, that mechaim she collects mizonos from her baal, therefore she has the koach to be tofes metaltalin for payment of her mizonos. But ksuba, which is not given to collection as long as he's alive and they're married, and she doesn't have koach and authority to be tofes metaltalin. Masket lo Marbaravashi, my shna. You should be consistent here. So Marbaravashi is going to disagree with Ravina and have a different shita. Liksuba, Dimimkarki lo metaltali. In the case of Ksuba, you're telling me that Hoskus is only from a karki and not from a taltu. Therefore, if she grabs onto the taltu motzinos or some the other, is mizoni nami. We should be consistent as far as mizonos because they're two mekarki and below taltu. Hoskus kavia is limited to karkos and not to the taltu. And therefore, if she grabbed onto the taltu, then we should be motzio. So Ella, but rather we're going to say that mizoni might tfasa tfasa something not really Ksuba. We're going to be consistent, apply the same yardstick, and we're going to say that even with regard to ksuba, like mizoni, her tfis of metaltalin is meaningful. However, Rav Yitzchak goes back to agree with the original position as we formulated for Ravina, that Haki Avini B'Shmei Rava Kavasek, Rava also accepted the fundamental distinction between mizonos and ksuba. Rav Yochanan B'Shmei Rav Yossi ben Zimra, Almona sheshasa achar mos baila shtayim v'shol shonim. So we'll soon see in a minute why it says shtayim v'shol shonim. But the almona, after the death of her husband, lo tova mizonos. She seems to be mocheles on a mizonos. She's not demanding payment of mizonos or any support. So we're going to say that the reason why she wasn't tovei mizonos for 2 or 3 years is because she was mocheles. Gemara asks on the language of Shtayim v'Shlosha, Hashta Shtayim Ib v'Shlosha Miboyer. Why did you have to add Shlosha if already after Shtayim she forfeits her rights to the zonas because she was Mokel? So Kasha Kambaniya Kambashira. Gemara offers 2 answers. This is the first of the 2 answers. In a case of Ananiya, she needs the money for the zonas to support herself. She's a poor woman. And therefore, it's obvious that if she's not collecting for a period of 2 years, that's already indicative that she was mocheles hamazonos. She'll find some other source of charity just to support herself. But Kambashira, in the case of an Ashira, she's not desperate for the monies. And therefore, the fact that she left, she allowed 2 years to go by, and now she comes to complain and demand mizonos after 3 years, it doesn't prove that she was a mochel. Sinami. Second answer is kan b'prutza, kan b'tznua. In the case of a prutza, you have a woman who is not embarrassed or inhibited by coming in front of the bezdin to demand her mizonos, and therefore already after 2 years, it's proof that she was mocheles. In the case of a tznua, on the other hand, who has a certain element of modesty, she's embarrassed and inhibited to come and show up in front of a bezdin in a public forum, in a court, then shtei shonim is not a proof that she's mocheles. We have to add a 3rd year. Amar Rava. Lo Amarin, when we say that her machila on zonos is valid, Ela Mafreya, only on those years went by and she was not demanding her mizonos. But from now on, she will collect mizonos. Why? Because machila is only chal al ha'ova, but not al lahava or yossi. Boy, Rav Yochanan, Yisomim Omrim Nasanu v'Hilmes Lo Natalti Al Mila V'Raya. Rav Yochanan vacillates about the case in which Yisomim say we already paid up the mizonos, and she claims that she never received the Dmei mizonos. Who has the Chovas Raya? On whom is the burden of proof? And the Gemara Daf Tzadi Hovam Beis will analyze the studim of Rav Yochanan's suffix.